"I speak 9 languages," the girl said proudly. The millionaire laughed but was left in shock. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone's assumptions about another person were completely shattered in the most spectacular way possible? Today, I'm going to share with you an incredible story that will remind you never to judge someone based on appearances alone. This is the extraordinary tale of Maya Rodriguez, a young woman whose linguistic gifts would change not only her own life, but the life of one of America's most successful tech entrepreneurs in ways that neither of them could have ever imagined. If this kind of inspiring content resonates with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss these amazing stories of triumph, determination, and the power of human potential. Now let's dive into this remarkable journey that proves talent and determination can triumph over prejudice and doubt in the most unexpected ways. The crisp autumn air in Silicon Valley carried its familiar buzz of innovation and ambition as 23-year-old Maya Rodriguez stepped off the crowded public bus at the bustling intersection of Sand Hill Road and El Camino Real. Her worn black sneakers, carefully polished the night before despite their obvious age, hit the pristine pavement with determination, though her stomach churned with a potent mixture of nervousness, excitement, and the kind of hope that could either lift you to incredible heights or break your heart completely. In her weathered canvas backpack, a faithful companion since her sophomore year of high school, she carried a manila folder containing her meticulously prepared resume, glowing letters of recommendation from professors who believed in her potential, and a dream that had sustained her through 4 challenging years of community college and countless hours of solitary self-study in her cramped bedroom. Maya had grown up in East San Jose, in a neighborhood where chain-link fences surrounded small houses with peeling paint, where the American dream felt more like a distant mirage shimmering on the horizon than an achievable goal within reach. The sound of multiple languages drifted from open windows, Spanish, Vietnamese, Tagalog, and others, creating a symphony of immigrant aspiration that had been the soundtrack of her childhood. Her parents, Carmen and Roberto Rodriguez, had immigrated from El Salvador in the turbulent 1990s, carrying nothing but hope packed carefully in their hearts, an unshakable belief in the transformative power of education, and a determination to provide their daughter with opportunities they had never dreamed of having themselves. Carmen worked as a house cleaner for wealthy families in Los Gatos and Saratoga, leaving before dawn each morning and returning after sunset, her hands roughened by countless hours of scrubbing floors and polishing surfaces in homes that cost more than she would earn in a lifetime. Roberto pulled double shifts at a manufacturing plant in Milpitas, where he operated heavy machinery that stamped metal parts for computer companies, his calloused hands and aching back a testament to the physical sacrifices he made daily for his family's future. Their own education had been cut short by poverty and civil war in their homeland, but they possessed the kind of wisdom that comes from struggle and the cultural richness that immigrants carry like precious cargo across borders and through generations. What Maya's hard-working parents lacked in formal credentials, they more than made up for in their understanding of the world's complexities and their respect for learning in all its forms. At home, Spanish flowed as naturally as breathing, but Carmen had also insisted from Maya's earliest years that her daughter master English without losing her connection to her native tongue. They understood instinctively that in America, language was power, and they wanted their daughter to wield that power effectively. What her devoted parents didn't fully comprehend was that their daughter possessed an extraordinary, almost supernatural gift for languages that went far beyond their bilingual household and would eventually open doors they had never even known existed. Maya's unexpected journey into the fascinating world of polyglottism had begun entirely by accident when she was 12 years old. On a sweltering Saturday morning, while helping her mother clean the garage of one of Carmen's employers, Maya had discovered a dusty cardboard box tucked behind old Christmas decorations and forgotten sporting equipment. Inside were language learning materials that seemed like buried treasure to her curious young mind. Dog-eared textbooks with yellowed pages, cassette tapes in plastic cases with handwritten labels, and workbooks in French, German, and Italian that some college student had apparently abandoned when they graduated and moved on to adult responsibilities. The wealthy homeowner, Mrs. Patterson, had been delighted to get rid of what she considered clutter and had sold the entire box to Maya for 5 crumpled dollar bills. money that Maya had saved from helping elderly neighbors with their grocery shopping and yard work. Those $5 purchased what would become the foundation of Maya's linguistic empire, though she had no way of knowing it at the time. Late into the night, long after finishing her homework and helping her mother with household chores that seemed endless, Maya would slip on a pair of second-hand headphones that her father had found at a thrift store and transport herself to the romantic cafes of Paris, the ancient castles of Germany, and the sun-drenched piazzas of Rome. She devoured every piece of material with the hunger of someone discovering a new universe, practicing pronunciation until her accent was flawless, memorizing grammar rules until they became as natural as breathing, and losing herself completely in the beauty of human communication across cultures. The learning process was far from easy. Maya encountered countless frustrations, verb conjugations that seemed to follow no logical pattern, pronunciation challenges that left her tongue twisted and her confidence shaken, and cultural references that required hours of research at the public library. But something deep within her was irresistibly drawn to the puzzle of language, to the way different cultures expressed universal human experiences through completely different linguistic structures. By her sophomore year of high school, Maya had achieved what her language teachers considered remarkable fluency in French, German, and Italian, but she was just getting started. Through a stroke of luck, she discovered that the elderly Chinese woman who ran the corner market near their apartment, Mrs. Chen, was a retired professor of literature from Beijing who had immigrated to America decades earlier. Mrs. Chen had become an unlikely mentor, patiently correcting Maya's Mandarin tones during quiet moments in the store and introducing her to the subtle nuances of Chinese culture that no textbook could ever adequately convey. Their relationship had begun when Maya, browsing the store's small selection of international magazines, had attempted to read aloud from a Chinese newspaper. Mrs. Chen had looked up from her accounting with surprise and delight, amazed to hear this young Latina girl stumbling through Mandarin characters with determination and surprising accuracy. "Ni wei sheme xue xi zhongwen?" Mrs. Chen had asked. "Why are you learning Chinese?" Maya had responded in halting but grammatically correct Mandarin. "因为我想了解世界," because I want to understand the world. From that day forward, Mrs. Chen had taken Maya under her wing, spending hours teaching her not just the mechanics of the language, but the cultural context that gave it meaning. They discussed Chinese philosophy, history, and literature, with Mrs. Chen sharing stories of her homeland that brought the language to life in ways that no classroom instruction could have achieved. Community college had opened even more linguistic doors for Maya. The diverse student body included immigrants and international students from around the globe, and Maya had quickly become known as the girl who could bridge communication gaps between students who spoke different languages. Her community college offered courses in Japanese and Portuguese, which she absorbed with the same voracious appetite that had characterized her earlier language learning adventures. The Japanese professor, Dr. Tanaka, had been initially skeptical of Maya's ability to handle such a complex language system, with its 3 different writing systems and intricate levels of politeness that reflected deep cultural values. But Maya had thrown herself into the challenge with characteristic determination, spending hours at the campus library practicing hiragana, katakana, and kanji characters until her hand cramped and her eyes watered from strain. Portuguese had come through evening classes taught by Professor Silva, a Brazilian immigrant who had recognized Maya's exceptional talent and had begun teaching her not just European Portuguese, but the distinctly different Brazilian variant, with its unique rhythms, slang, and cultural expressions that reflected the vibrant diversity of South America's largest nation. During her precious spare time, Maya had tackled Russian through a combination of library books, online resources, and conversation exchanges with international students who were studying at nearby San Jose State University. The Cyrillic alphabet had presented a new challenge, but Maya had approached it with the same methodical determination that had served her so well with other languages. She spent countless hours in coffee shops near the university, practicing conversations with Russian exchange students who were amazed by her dedication and progress. Most recently, she had begun mastering Arabic with the patient help of Omar, a Syrian refugee who worked part-time at the local mosque while pursuing his engineering degree. Omar had fled his war-torn homeland with nothing but his education and his faith, and he had been deeply moved by Maya's respectful curiosity about his language and culture. Their tutoring sessions, held in the mosque's community room, had become a bridge between two worlds that rarely intersected in American society. Omar had taught Maya not just the mechanics of Arabic grammar and vocabulary, but the profound cultural and religious contexts that shaped how the language was used in different situations. He had explained the difference between classical Arabic, modern standard Arabic, and the various regional dialects that could vary dramatically from country to country, helping Maya understand that learning Arabic was like learning several related but distinct languages simultaneously. 9 languages in total: Spanish, English, French, German, Italian, Mandarin Chinese, Japanese, Portuguese, Russian, and Arabic. Each one had been conquered through sheer determination, countless hours of practice, an insatiable curiosity about the world beyond her neighborhood's boundaries, and a growing understanding that language was the key to unlocking not just communication, but empathy, connection, and opportunity on a scale she was only beginning to comprehend. The path had not been without its challenges and moments of doubt. There had been nights when Maya had questioned whether her linguistic pursuits were practical or just an expensive hobby that her family could not afford. There had been classmates who had made cruel comments about her accent when she spoke English, not realizing that she could respond fluently in 8 other languages. There had been teachers who had seemed surprised by her academic abilities, their lowered expectations based on assumptions about her neighborhood, her family's economic status, and her ethnic background. But Maya had persevered, driven by an inner fire that burned brighter with each new linguistic achievement. Every language she mastered opened new worlds of literature, film, music, and human connection. She had read Cervantes in Spanish, Goethe in German, Dante in Italian, and Lu Xun in Chinese. She had watched Japanese films without subtitles, understood Russian poetry in its original form, and appreciated the intricate wordplay of Arabic literature that was completely lost in translation. Now, as Maya walked through the pristine, tree-lined streets of Palo Alto toward the gleaming headquarters of Techno-Global Industries, she carried not just her linguistic skills, but the hopes and dreams of everyone who had ever believed in her potential. Her parents, who had sacrificed everything for her education, her teachers, who had seen something special in her dedication, and the global community of language learners and cultural ambassadors who had welcomed her into their midst. Today was the day of her final interview, for a position as International Communications Coordinator, a role that would utilize her language abilities in the corporate world and finally provide the financial stability that her family had never known. But more than that, it represented validation that her years of study and sacrifice had been worthwhile, that the girl from East San Jose who had learned languages from garage sale cassette tapes could compete in the rarefied atmosphere of Silicon Valley success. Techno-Global Industries occupied a stunning architectural masterpiece of glass and steel that seemed to touch the azure California sky, its modern design reflecting the innovative spirit that had made Silicon Valley the epicenter of global technological advancement. The building's facade was a testament to success and ambition, with clean lines, soaring spaces, and the kind of expensive minimalism that spoke of unlimited resources and visionary thinking. Founded 15 years earlier by 38-year-old tech mogul Alexander Sterling, Techno-Global had revolutionized international business communications through innovative software solutions that had made cross-border commerce faster, more efficient, and more profitable for companies around the world. Sterling himself had become something of a legend in Silicon Valley circles, a Harvard MBA from old money who had parlayed his family's considerable wealth and his own undeniable business acumen into a multi-billion-dollar empire that now spanned 6 continents and employed over 50,000 people worldwide. Alexander Sterling was the kind of man who had been born into privilege and had never questioned his place at the top of the social and economic hierarchy. His great-grandfather had built a railroad fortune in the early 20th century. His grandfather had expanded into oil and real estate, and his father had made the family's first foray into technology during the personal computer revolution of the 1980s. Alexander had been groomed for success from childhood, attending exclusive private schools, Ivy League universities, and spending summers at the family compound in the Hamptons, where he had networked with the children of other wealthy and influential families. But to his credit, Alexander had not simply coasted on his family's reputation and resources. He had demonstrated genuine business vision and leadership ability, transforming Techno Global from a small software startup into a global powerhouse through a combination of strategic acquisitions, innovative product development, and an aggressive expansion strategy that had made the company a dominant player in international markets. Maya approached the imposing reception desk with practiced confidence, though her heart hammered against her ribs with a rhythm that seemed to echo in her ears. The lobby was a monument to modern corporate success, all polished marble floors that reflected the light from massive crystal chandeliers, abstract art installations that probably cost more than her family's annual income, and the kind of pristine, intimidating atmosphere that was designed to impress visitors and remind them of the company's wealth and power. Behind the reception desk sat an impeccably dressed woman whose appearance seemed to have been professionally curated. Perfect makeup, expertly styled blonde hair, and a designer suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe. Her nameplate, crafted from what appeared to be genuine silver, read Jennifer Whitman Executive Reception. "Good morning," Maya said, her voice steady despite the butterflies dancing in her stomach. "I'm here for my interview with Mr. Sterling." Maya Rodriguez. Jennifer looked up from her computer screen with a polite but slightly puzzled expression that Maya had unfortunately become accustomed to recognizing. It was the look that said, "Are you sure you're in the right place?" A reaction to her appearance that, despite her modest but carefully chosen professional attire and obvious Hispanic heritage, seemed to surprise people in these elite corporate environments, where diversity was often discussed but not always genuinely embraced. Maya had chosen her outfit carefully the night before, trying on several combinations, before settling on a navy blue blazer that she had found at a consignment shop, paired with black slacks and a crisp white blouse that she had saved for special occasions. She had spent her last $20 on having her resume professionally printed at a copy center, and she had practiced her interview answers in front of her bedroom mirror until she could deliver them with confidence and poise. "Of course, Ms. Rodriguez," Jennifer replied after consulting her computer and finding Maya's appointment in the system. "Please take a seat in our reception area. Mr. Sterling is currently in a meeting, but he'll be with you shortly." Maya settled into one of the plush leather chairs in the waiting area, using the time to review her carefully prepared talking points and to calm her nerves through the deep breathing exercises she had learned in a stress management workshop at her community college. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the Silicon Valley landscape, she could see the constant buzz of activity that defined this region. Young entrepreneurs hurrying between meetings with laptops and smartphones constantly in hand, venture capitalists in expensive suits discussing the next revolutionary idea over coffee, and the perpetual energy of innovation and ambition that made this place the epicenter of the global technology industry. Maya had spent hours researching Techno Global and preparing for this interview, reading every article she could find about the company's history, its current market position, and its future expansion plans. She had studied Alexander Sterling's background, his business philosophy, and his public statements about international growth opportunities. She had even attempted to analyze the company's financial reports, though some of the more complex business terminology had required additional research to fully understand. 25 minutes later, Maya heard the soft chime of elevator doors opening, and she looked up to see a tall, imposing figure emerge from the executive elevator bank. Alexander Sterling moved with the confident, purposeful stride of someone who had never questioned his place in the world or doubted his right to command respect and attention wherever he went. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled in the kind of expensive cut that required weekly maintenance by elite stylists. His watch was a Rolex Submariner that caught and reflected the lobby's sophisticated lighting, and his entire presence radiated the kind of natural authority that came from a lifetime of privilege, education, and success. Sterling's navy blue suit was clearly custom-tailored, probably costing more than Maya's family spent on clothing in several years. His Italian leather shoes were polished to a mirror finish, and even his tie, a subtle pattern that suggested expensive taste without being ostentatious, spoke of someone who understood that details mattered in the world of high-stakes business. This was a man who had been born into the upper echelons of American society and had never known anything but success, respect, and deference from those around him. "Ms. Rodriguez." Sterling's voice carried the crisp, precise articulation of an Ivy League education, with the kind of confident projection that came from years of addressing boardrooms filled with powerful executives and investors. "I'm Alexander Sterling. Please, come up to my office where we can speak privately." Maya gathered her belongings and followed Sterling into the private elevator that whisked them silently to the executive floor. The elevator itself was a small marvel of luxury, mirrored walls, soft lighting, and the kind of smooth, whisper-quiet operation that spoke of the highest quality engineering and materials. As they rose through the building, Sterling made polite small talk about the weather and Maya's commute from San Jose, though she could sense him evaluating her responses and demeanor with the calculating attention of someone accustomed to making quick judgments about people's potential value to his organization. Sterling's corner office was a monument to corporate success and personal achievement that took Maya's breath away, despite her attempts to remain composed. Panoramic views of the Bay Area stretched out in all directions, offering a perspective on Silicon Valley that few people ever had the privilege to experience. Awards, accolades, and certificates of achievement covered one entire wall. Recognition from business magazines, humanitarian organizations, and industry associations that testified to Sterling's influence and success in the business world. Behind his massive mahogany desk, which was larger than Maya's bedroom and probably cost more than her parents' car, diplomas from Harvard Business School hung in expensive frames alongside certificates of various professional achievements. The office also featured a conference table that could comfortably seat 20 people, a sitting area with leather furniture that looked like it belonged in an exclusive men's club, and the kind of sophisticated technology integration that allowed Sterling to connect instantly with his global business empire at the touch of a button. "Please have a seat," Sterling said, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk while he settled into his own executive chair, which was clearly designed to emphasize his position of authority in the room. He opened a manila folder that Maya assumed contained her resume and application materials, though she noticed him glancing at her appearance with an expression that she couldn't quite read, a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and something that might have been amusement. "I'll be completely honest with you, Ms. Rodriguez," Sterling said, his tone carrying the casual confidence of someone who was accustomed to speaking his mind without worrying about the consequences. "Your application certainly caught my attention when it crossed my desk, though I have to admit that some of your claims seem rather ambitious for someone with your background and experience level." Maya straightened in her chair, immediately recognizing the subtle challenge in his tone and the implications of his word choice. She had encountered this kind of skepticism before, the polite but unmistakable assumption that someone from her economic and cultural background could not possibly possess the qualifications she claimed to have achieved. "Which claims specifically concern you, Mr. Sterling?" Maya asked, her voice remaining steady and professional despite the defensiveness rising in her chest. Sterling glanced at the papers before him, then looked up with what was definitely amusement dancing in his eyes. "You state here quite boldly that you're fluent in 9 languages. 9 languages, Ms. Rodriguez. That's quite a remarkable claim for someone your age, particularly someone with your educational background and current circumstances." The pause before educational background hung in the air like a weight, and Maya felt the familiar sting of assumptions based on her appearance, her zip code, her last name, and the community college degree listed on her resume. But she had faced this skepticism many times before in academic and professional settings, and she had learned to channel it into motivation rather than allowing it to undermine her confidence or derail her goals. "Yes, sir, that's correct," Maya replied evenly, maintaining eye contact and keeping her voice level. "Spanish and English are my native languages, but I've also achieved fluency in French, German, Italian, Mandarin Chinese, Japanese, Portuguese, Russian, and Arabic through a combination of formal study and extensive self-directed learning." Sterling leaned back in his expensive executive chair, and Maya caught the hint of a condescending smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The expression was one she had seen before, the look of someone who believed they had encountered an obvious exaggeration or outright fabrication and were enjoying the process of exposing it. "I see," Sterling said, his tone becoming more skeptical. "And where exactly did you acquire this rather impressive linguistic education? According to your resume, you attended San Jose Community College, which, while I'm sure is a fine institution, is not typically known for producing polyglots of international caliber." "That's correct, sir," Maya said, maintaining her composure despite the obvious condescension in his voice and the way he seemed to be enjoying her discomfort. "I'm largely self-taught through a combination of textbooks, audio materials, online resources, and conversation practice with native speakers in my community. I've also taken advantage of language courses offered at my college and through community organizations." Self-taught. Sterling repeated the words slowly, as if they tasted sour in his mouth. "Ms. Rodriguez, let me share some perspective with you. I spent 4 years at Harvard University and 2 additional years studying abroad in France and Germany to master French and German to what I would consider a business-appropriate level. My company has invested tens of thousands of dollars in executive language training programs for our senior staff. You're seriously asking me to believe that you accomplished significantly more than that through independent study in East San Jose?" Maya felt heat rising in her cheeks as Sterling's skepticism became increasingly pointed and personal, but she forced herself to keep her voice steady and professional. This was exactly the kind of moment her parents had prepared her for, the moment when someone would try to make her feel small because of where she came from or how she had acquired her knowledge. "Yes, sir. I understand that it might seem unusual," Maya replied, her voice taking on a slightly steelier quality. "But I have a particular aptitude for languages, and I've been extraordinarily dedicated to my studies. I believe that passion and persistence can sometimes achieve results that traditional educational paths might not produce as efficiently." Sterling's expression had shifted from professional skepticism to something approaching open amusement, as if he were enjoying a private joke at Maya's expense. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing with the kind of predatory focus that Maya imagined he brought to difficult business negotiations. "I'm sure you have been dedicated, Ms. Rodriguez," Sterling said, his tone now carrying an edge of barely concealed mockery. "But let's be realistic here. Are you actually expecting me to believe that a young woman from—" He glanced pointedly at the address listed on her resume. "East San Jose, with no formal language education beyond community college courses, has somehow mastered 9 languages to a professional level that would be useful in international business settings." The question hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down, and Maya could see the assumptions written clearly across Sterling's face. Assumptions about her neighborhood, her family's economic status, her educational opportunities, and her place in the social hierarchy that he had never questioned. She had encountered this skepticism countless times before, but something about Sterling's casual dismissal and obvious enjoyment of her discomfort sparked a fire within her that she struggled to contain. This was the moment Maya had been preparing for her entire life, whether she had realized it or not. Every hour spent studying in her cramped bedroom, every conversation with Mrs. Chen about Chinese culture, every evening spent practicing Arabic pronunciation with Omar at the mosque, every sacrifice her parents had made to support her education. It had all led to this moment, when she would either prove herself or be dismissed based on someone else's prejudices and assumptions. "Mr. Sterling," Maya said, her voice taking on a quality of quiet confidence that would have made her mother proud and her father beam with admiration. "Would you like me to demonstrate my linguistic abilities rather than simply discussing them theoretically?" Sterling's eyebrows rose slightly, the first crack in his confident demeanor since the interview had begun. "Demonstrate? What exactly do you mean by that?" "I mean," Maya said, leaning forward slightly in her chair and meeting his gaze directly, "that you mentioned you speak French and German at a business level. Perhaps we could conduct part of this interview in those languages, and you could evaluate my fluency for yourself, rather than relying on assumptions about what someone with my background could or could not have achieved." For the first time since Maya had entered his imposing office, Sterling looked genuinely surprised, rather than merely amused or skeptical. The smirk faded from his face, replaced by a mixture of curiosity and perhaps a hint of wariness, as he realized that Maya was calling his bluff in a way that he had not expected, from someone he had clearly underestimated. Sterling had conducted hundreds of interviews over his career, and he was accustomed to candidates who deferred to his authority, who seemed intimidated by his success and wealth, who accepted his skepticism as justified and tried to convince him through pleading rather than proof. Maya's confident challenge had caught him completely off guard. "Very well," Sterling said after a moment's hesitation, switching to French with the kind of accent that suggested expensive tutoring and study abroad programs. Tell me about your experience with international business communications and how you believe your language skills would benefit our company's global expansion efforts. Maya's response flowed in perfect, unaccented French that demonstrated not just fluency, but the kind of sophisticated vocabulary and cultural understanding that typically came from years of immersion or intensive study. I have extensive experience facilitating communication between diverse international partners through my work with the San Jose Sister Cities program, where I served as both a translator and cultural liaison for delegations from France, Mexico, and Japan. I helped negotiate several cultural exchange agreements and facilitated business meetings between local technology startups and international investors who were exploring opportunities in the Silicon Valley market. Sterling's eyes widened noticeably as Maya continued in flawless French, describing her experience with cultural nuances, her understanding of business etiquette in different countries, and her ability to navigate the subtle but crucial differences between formal and informal communication styles that could make or break international business relationships. Maya's French was not just fluent, it was sophisticated, nuanced, and delivered with the confidence and cultural awareness of someone who truly understood the language rather than simply memorizing phrases and grammatical structures. Her accent was perfect, her vocabulary was extensive and business appropriate, and her grasp of idiomatic expressions demonstrated a deep familiarity with French culture that went far beyond textbook learning. But Sterling wasn't ready to concede defeat or admit that his assumptions had been wrong. He had built his reputation on being the smartest person in the room, and he wasn't about to let a community college graduate from East San Jose undermine his self-image without a fight. Switching to German with the kind of precision that reflected his own expensive education and business training, Sterling continued the interview with questions designed to test not just Maya's language skills, but her knowledge of European business culture and international market dynamics. What do you know about our company's operations in European markets, and how would you approach the cultural challenges we've encountered in expanding our presence in German-speaking countries? Sterling asked in German, confident that this more complex business topic would expose any limitations in Maya's linguistic or cultural knowledge. Again, Maya's response was flawless, delivered in German that was not only grammatically perfect, but demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both language and culture. TechnoGlobal has significant partnerships with companies in Berlin, Munich, and Vienna, primarily focused on fintech and enterprise software solutions. Your recent acquisition of the Hamburg-based startup Digital Brücke expanded your presence in the German-speaking markets considerably, and I'm particularly impressed by your company's approach to localization, not just translating products, but adapting them to reflect the cultural business practices and regulatory requirements in each region. Maya continued in fluent German, discussing the importance of understanding German business culture's emphasis on thorough planning, detailed documentation, and long-term relationship building, as well as the differences between business practices in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland that many American companies failed to appreciate. Sterling was no longer smirking. Maya's German was not just impeccable. It demonstrated a level of cultural understanding and business knowledge that many of his own employees, despite their expensive educations and corporate training programs, had not achieved. She was discussing complex business concepts with the kind of sophisticated vocabulary and cultural insight that typically came from years of experience working in international markets. But Maya wasn't finished. She could see the shock and growing respect in Sterling's eyes, and she decided to press her advantage while she had his attention and before he could recover his equilibrium. "If you'd like to try Italian," Maya said with a confident smile, switching languages as easily as changing radio stations, "I'd be delighted to continue our conversation, though I should mention that I'm equally comfortable in Mandarin Chinese if you'd prefer to discuss your Asian market strategies, or perhaps Arabic if you'd like to explore the significant opportunities available in Middle Eastern markets that many American technology companies have been unable to penetrate effectively." This time, Sterling was genuinely speechless. Maya's casual mention of Chinese and Arabic, languages that he didn't speak at all, and that represented markets where his company had struggled to make meaningful progress despite significant financial investments, had caught him completely off guard. The confident young woman sitting across from his desk was not just multilingual. She was offering to discuss business strategies in languages and markets that represented some of his company's greatest challenges and unrealized opportunities. The power dynamic in the room had shifted dramatically in a matter of minutes. Sterling, who had begun the interview feeling smugly superior and slightly amused by what he had assumed would be an easy demolition of an overconfident candidate's exaggerated claims, now found himself facing someone whose capabilities far exceeded anything he had imagined possible. Perhaps we should return to English for a moment, Sterling said, clearly struggling to process what he had just witnessed and to regain some measure of control over an interview that had gone completely off script. Of course, Maya replied graciously, her tone remaining perfectly professional, despite the dramatic shift in power dynamics that had just occurred in the room. She could see Sterling processing what had just happened, watching his assumptions crumble in real time, and she felt a mixture of satisfaction and empathy for someone whose worldview was being challenged so directly. Sterling stared at Maya for a long moment, as if seeing her for the first time, and trying to reconcile the confident multilingual professional sitting before him with the assumptions he had made based on her resume, her appearance, and her background. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of realization and the uncomfortable recognition that he had been completely wrong about her capabilities. "Ms. Rodriguez," Sterling said finally, his voice carrying a note of genuine humility that Maya suspected he rarely displayed, "I owe you a sincere apology. I made assumptions about your capabilities based on factors that have absolutely nothing to do with your qualifications or your potential value to this organization." "I appreciate that acknowledgement, Mr. Sterling," Maya said graciously, recognizing that this was likely a difficult moment for someone accustomed to being right about everything. "I understand that my background and educational path might not be what you typically encounter for this type of position, but I hope I've demonstrated that excellence can emerge from unexpected places and through unconventional methods." "Your background," Sterling repeated slowly, as if tasting the words and finding them completely different than they had seemed just minutes earlier, "includes fluency in languages that our company desperately needs for international expansion, along with cultural knowledge that we've been struggling to develop despite significant financial investments. Do you really speak Chinese and Arabic fluently, or were you simply making a point about my assumptions?" Maya nodded confidently. "I speak Mandarin Chinese fluently, and I'm conversational in Cantonese as well, which opens up both mainland China and Hong Kong markets. My Arabic is strongest in modern Standard Arabic, though I can communicate effectively in several regional dialects, including Gulf Arabic, Egyptian Arabic, and Levantine Arabic, each of which is important for different business contexts in the Middle East." Sterling leaned forward, his entire demeanor transformed from skeptical interviewer to fascinated business strategist. "Ms. Rodriguez, I need to be completely honest with you about something. We've been trying to break into the Chinese market for over 2 years. We've hired expensive consultants, engaged language services, brought in cultural advisors with impressive credentials, and we've made minimal progress despite investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in the effort. Our attempts to establish meaningful partnerships in the Middle East have been even less successful. Cultural understanding is often just as important as language proficiency," Maya observed, drawing on conversations she had had with Mrs. Chen, Omar, and countless other cultural mentors who had helped shape her understanding of international business. "Sometimes the most literal translation isn't the most effective communication, and sometimes what isn't said is more important than what is said explicitly." "Exactly." Sterling's voice carried a note of excitement and relief that Maya suspected he rarely displayed in professional settings. "We've had translators who could convert our materials word for word, but they couldn't convey the underlying business culture, the relationship dynamics or the cultural values that drive decision-making in these markets. We've been treating language as a technical problem when it's actually a cultural bridge." Maya could see the wheels turning in Sterling's analytical mind, and she recognized this as the crucial moment when she could demonstrate not just her linguistic skills, but her understanding of how language and culture intersected in the complex world of international business. "Mr. Sterling, if I may share a specific example," Maya said, "last year I helped a local biotechnology startup prepare for a crucial presentation to potential Chinese investors. Their original presentation focused heavily on individual achievement, competitive advantages, and short-term profit potential, values that resonate strongly in American business culture and had served them well with domestic investors. Sterling was now taking notes, his earlier skepticism completely forgotten as he focused intently on Maya's words. But in Chinese business culture, Maya continued, those concepts needed to be completely reframed around collective success, long-term relationship building, and mutual benefit for all stakeholders involved. We didn't change the fundamental business plan or the financial projections, but we completely restructured how the opportunity was presented to align with Chinese cultural values and business expectations. What was the result? Sterling asked, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. They secured $2.3 million in Series A funding, Maya replied simply. But more importantly, they established ongoing relationships with their Chinese investors that have led to additional opportunities and partnerships that continue to generate value 2 years later. The silence that followed was profound and loaded with implications. Sterling stared at Maya with a mixture of amazement, respect, and what appeared to be genuine excitement about the possibilities her skills represented for his company's international expansion efforts. "Ms. Rodriguez," Sterling said slowly, "I think I've been approaching this entire interview completely wrong. Instead of questioning your qualifications, I should be asking how quickly you can start and what it would take to convince you to join our team." Maya felt a surge of triumph coursing through her veins, but she maintained her professional composure and recognized that this was the moment to demonstrate not just her linguistic abilities, but her business acumen and strategic thinking. "I appreciate your confidence, Mr. Sterling," Maya said thoughtfully. "However, I think it's important that we discuss the role and your expectations in detail to ensure that this would be a mutually beneficial arrangement for both of us. If you're inspired by Maya's incredible demonstration of how talent and preparation can overcome prejudice and assumptions, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of determination, courage, and the power of proving others wrong through excellence." Sterling spent the next hour and a half outlining TechnoGlobal's ambitious international expansion plans in unprecedented detail, and Maya found herself genuinely excited by the scope and complexity of the opportunities the company was pursuing. TechnoGlobal was looking to establish significant partnerships throughout Asia, expand their already substantial European operations into new markets, and explore emerging opportunities in the Middle East, Latin America, and Africa, markets that represented enormous potential, but had proven challenging for many American technology companies to penetrate effectively. The company's software solutions were innovative and genuinely valuable, but Sterling admitted that they had struggled to communicate their value proposition effectively across cultural and linguistic barriers. Their attempts at localization had been largely unsuccessful. Their marketing materials had failed to resonate with international audiences, and their business development efforts had been hampered by cultural misunderstandings that had damaged potential partnerships before they could develop into profitable relationships. "There is one significant concern I need to address honestly," Sterling said, as their extended conversation began to wind down. "This position would involve substantial international travel, high-stakes negotiations with senior executives, and representation of TechnoGlobal in meetings with government officials, industry leaders, and international partners. You would be operating in environments where millions of dollars in business might depend on your ability to navigate complex cultural dynamics and communicate effectively with people who have very different backgrounds and expectations than what you might be accustomed to. Are you confident that you can operate effectively in those kinds of high-pressure, high-stakes environments?" Maya understood the subtext of Sterling's question perfectly. He was asking, as diplomatically as possible, whether someone from her background could navigate the rarefied world of international business, whether she could command respect in boardrooms filled with powerful executives, whether she possessed not just the linguistic skills but the cultural sophistication and professional presence necessary to represent a major corporation on the global stage. "Mr. Sterling," Maya said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had developed through years of navigating between different cultures, "I've been operating between multiple worlds my entire life. I've learned to code switch not just between languages, but between social contexts, economic realities, and cultural expectations that most people never have to navigate. I'm equally comfortable discussing quantum computing algorithms with Chinese technology executives in Mandarin, as I am helping my elderly neighbor translate complex legal documents from Spanish to English. She paused, gathering her thoughts and drawing on experiences that had shaped her understanding of human nature and cross-cultural communication. I understand that business is fundamentally about relationships and trust, Maya continued. People want to work with individuals who understand and respect their perspectives, who can communicate not just in their language, but in their cultural context. My background has taught me that respect and genuine curiosity about other people's experiences can overcome almost any barrier, and that authenticity is often more valuable than expensive credentials. Sterling nodded slowly, and Maya could see something shifting in his expression, a growing recognition that her unconventional background might actually be an asset rather than a liability in the complex world of international business. "I believe you can," Sterling said with conviction. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'd like to offer you a position, but not the International Communications Coordinator role that was originally posted. I'd like to offer you the position of International Communications Director, a senior-level role with significantly more responsibility and authority. The position comes with a starting salary of $120,000 per year, comprehensive benefits including health insurance and retirement planning, 3 weeks of paid vacation, and substantial opportunities for advancement as we expand our international operations." Maya's heart skipped several beats as she processed the magnitude of what Sterling was offering. The salary alone was more than her parents had ever earned combined in a single year, representing not just financial security, but a level of professional validation that she had hardly dared to imagine. The director-level title meant that she would have real authority and decision-making power, rather than simply serving as a translator or coordinator for other people's strategies. "I'm very interested in the opportunity," Maya managed, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "When would you need a final decision from me?" "Take the weekend to consider the offer and discuss it with your family," Sterling said, standing and extending his hand with genuine warmth and respect. "But I sincerely hope you'll accept. I think you could be instrumental in taking Techno Global to the next level internationally, and I believe this could be the beginning of an extraordinary career for you." As Maya shook Sterling's hand, she marveled at the complete transformation in his attitude and behavior. The man who had begun the interview, with barely concealed skepticism and condescending amusement, was now looking at her with something approaching admiration and genuine excitement about the possibility of working together. "There's one more thing I'd like to propose," Sterling added, as Maya gathered her belongings. "Regardless of your decision about the position, I'd like to arrange for you to meet with our international development team next week. They've been struggling with some significant cultural challenges in our Asian and Middle Eastern market expansion efforts, and I think your insights and perspective could be invaluable in helping them develop more effective strategies." Maya left the Techno Global building feeling like she was walking on air, her feet barely touching the pristine sidewalks of Palo Alto as she made her way back toward the bus stop. The California sunshine seemed brighter, the Silicon Valley energy more welcoming, and the future more full of possibilities than she had ever dared to imagine when she had stepped off the bus just a few hours earlier. As she waited for the public bus that would take her back to East San Jose, Maya reflected on the extraordinary conversation she had just experienced. Sterling's initial skepticism had been painful, but unfortunately not surprising. She had encountered similar attitudes throughout her academic and professional journey, from teachers who had low expectations to counselors who had suggested that she consider more realistic career goals based on her family's economic circumstances. What had surprised her was Sterling's willingness to completely reassess his assumptions when presented with evidence that contradicted them. Many people, Maya had learned, preferred to maintain their prejudices rather than admit they had been wrong about someone or something. Sterling's intellectual honesty and ability to acknowledge his mistake had actually impressed her almost as much as the job offer itself. The bus ride back to East San Jose gave Maya time to process the magnitude of what had just occurred and to begin planning how she would share this news with her parents, her professors, and the community that had supported her throughout her educational journey. The job offer represented more than just employment. It was a chance to use her gifts on an international stage, to bridge cultures and facilitate understanding between people from vastly different backgrounds, and to prove that excellence could emerge from the most unexpected places. When Maya arrived home that evening, she found her parents in their familiar positions in the family's small but immaculately clean kitchen. Carmen was preparing dinner, the same simple but nourishing meals that had sustained the family through years of financial struggle, while Roberto sat at their small dining table, reading a Spanish-language newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he caught up on news from their homeland and their adopted community. "¿Cómo te fue, mija?" Carmen asked, turning from the stove with hopeful eyes that reflected both anxiety and anticipation. Maya's parents had been following her job search with intense interest, understanding that this opportunity could transform not just Maya's future, but the trajectory of their entire family. "Creo que me va a ofrecer el trabajo," Maya replied, then switched to English to include both languages in sharing her news. "I think he's going to offer me the job. Actually, he already did, and it's even better than I hoped." Roberto looked up from his newspaper, his weathered face breaking into a smile that reflected decades of hopes and dreams for his daughter's success. "En serio? Tell us everything that happened." Maya recounted the interview in detail, describing Sterling's initial skepticism, the moment when she had challenged him to test her linguistic abilities, and his complete transformation as he realized that his assumptions had been completely wrong. Her parents listened with rapt attention, their pride evident in every nod, smile, and exclamation of amazement. "Estoy tan orgullosa de ti," Carmen said, tears gathering in her eyes as she fully grasped what Maya had accomplished. "All those nights you spent studying, all those hours with those old tapes and books, all the times we worried that you were working too hard. It all paid off, Mama," Maya said, embracing her mother in the kind of hug that conveyed years of love, sacrifice, and shared dreams. "Every hour of study, every moment of doubt, every challenge we faced as a family, it all led to this moment." "Cuánto van a pagarte?" Roberto asked with the practical mindset of someone who had spent his life worrying about making ends meet. $120,000 per year, Papa, plus benefits and opportunities for advancement." The silence that followed was profound, as both parents processed the magnitude of that number. Roberto carefully folded his newspaper and removed his reading glasses, while Carmen sank into a chair as the reality of their daughter's achievement fully registered. "Dios mío," Carmen whispered, "that's more than your father and I have ever made together in any year of our lives." "And it's just the beginning," Maya said with quiet confidence. "Mr. Sterling made it clear that there are opportunities for advancement as the company grows internationally. This could be the start of something incredible for all of us." Over the weekend, Maya carefully considered Sterling's offer from every possible angle, consulting with her former professors, researching the company's financial stability and growth prospects, and thinking deeply about the career path she wanted to pursue. The salary was certainly attractive, but more importantly, the role would allow her to use her linguistic gifts and cultural knowledge in ways that could make a meaningful difference in the world. Her linguistics professor, Dr. Sarah Martinez, had been one of Maya's strongest advocates throughout her community college experience, recognizing both her exceptional talent and her dedication to excellence. When Maya called to share the news and seek advice, Dr. Martinez was thrilled, but not particularly surprised by her former student's success. "Maya, I've been teaching linguistics for 23 years, and I've never encountered anyone with your natural ability for languages combined with your intellectual curiosity about cultures," Dr. Martinez said. "But more than that, you understand that language is fundamentally about human connection, not just technical communication skills. That understanding is what's going to make you successful in any career you choose to pursue." Dr. Martinez also provided valuable perspective on the transition Maya would be making from community college graduate to international business executive, helping her understand both the opportunities and challenges that lay ahead. "You're going to encounter people who will question your qualifications based on where you went to school or where you grew up," Dr. Martinez warned. "But you've already proven that you can handle that kind of skepticism. Just remember that your unconventional path to expertise is actually a strength, not a weakness. You've learned languages and cultures from the ground up, through genuine curiosity and human connection, rather than through expensive programs designed to create a superficial veneer of international sophistication." Monday morning found Maya back at Techno Global's headquarters, this time dressed in a new professional suit that she had purchased over the weekend using savings she had carefully accumulated from her part-time job at the community college's language lab. The navy blue suit was nothing fancy, but it was well fitted and projected the kind of professional image that Maya felt was appropriate for her new role. Sterling personally introduced Maya to TechnoGlobal's international development team, a group of talented and well-educated professionals who had been struggling to make meaningful progress in several key global markets despite their best efforts and significant financial resources. "Team," Sterling said to the assembled group, "I'd like you to meet Maya Rodriguez, who will be joining us as our new International Communications Director. Maya has extraordinary linguistic abilities and cultural insights that I believe will be invaluable in addressing some of the challenges we've been facing in our international expansion efforts." The team members: David Chen, who headed Asian Market Development; Sarah Williams, who managed European operations; Michael Thompson, who was responsible for Latin American markets; and Jennifer Lopez, who had been attempting to develop strategies for Middle Eastern expansion, welcomed Maya with the kind of polite professionalism that she had come to expect in corporate environments. "Maya," Sterling continued, "I'd like you to listen to some of the specific challenges the team has been facing and share your thoughts and perspectives. Your fresh eyes and cultural knowledge might help us identify approaches we haven't considered." David Chen, a second-generation Chinese-American who had graduated from Stanford with an MBA, spoke first about the team's struggles in the Chinese market. "We've been trying to establish meaningful partnerships with companies in Shanghai and Beijing for over 18 months, he explained. "We have excellent technology, competitive pricing, and strong financial backing, but we keep running into cultural barriers that we don't fully understand how to navigate." So Maya listened carefully as David described their approach: formal presentations that emphasized TechnoGlobal's technological superiority, detailed technical specifications that highlighted their competitive advantages, and financial analyses that demonstrated the potential profitability of partnerships with American companies. "If I may offer an observation," Maya said when David had finished his presentation, "it sounds like you're approaching these potential partnerships primarily as business transactions rather than as relationship-building opportunities. In Chinese business culture, trust and long-term thinking are often more important than immediate technical or financial advantages. But how do we demonstrate trustworthiness and long-term commitment when we're trying to establish initial contact?" asked Sarah Williams, who had been struggling with similar challenges in some European markets. Maya smiled, drawing on her countless conversations with Mrs. Chen about Chinese business philosophy and her extensive reading about cross-cultural business practices. "Start by learning about their businesses, their challenges, and their long-term goals beyond what you want to sell them. What are they trying to achieve in the next 5 or 10 years? What obstacles do they face in their own market expansion efforts? How can TechnoGlobal potentially help them succeed in ways that don't immediately or directly benefit your bottom line?" The team spent the next 2.5 hours in intensive discussion about cultural nuances, communication strategies, and relationship-building approaches that went far beyond traditional American business development methods. Maya found herself drawing on knowledge gained not just from textbooks and formal study, but from her rich personal experience in navigating between cultures, her conversations with international students and immigrant business owners in her neighborhood, and her participation in online communities of language learners and cultural enthusiasts from around the world. "This is exactly the kind of perspective we've been missing," Sterling observed as the meeting concluded. "Maya, I know you haven't officially started yet, but would you be willing to join us for a video conference with a potential partner in Beijing this afternoon? We've been trying to make progress with this particular company for months, and we could really use your cultural insights and linguistic abilities." Maya agreed without hesitation, and that afternoon found herself in TechnoGlobal's state-of-the-art conference room, facing a wall-mounted screen filled with executives from a major Chinese technology firm. The room itself was impressive, equipped with the latest video conferencing technology, surrounded by whiteboards covered with strategic planning diagrams and designed to project an image of innovation and success to international partners. As David Chen began his carefully prepared presentation in English with professional translation services, Maya observed the subtle reactions and body language of the Chinese executives on the screen. Their expressions were polite but emotionally distant, their posture formal and somewhat guarded, and their engagement with the material seemed minimal despite the obvious quality of TechnoGlobal's technology and business proposition. When David finished his presentation, the lead Chinese executive, Mr. Wang Wei, responded with the kind of diplomatically polite but non-committal remarks that international business people learn to recognize as polite rejection. "Thank you for this interesting presentation. We will certainly consider your proposal carefully and evaluate it against our other strategic options," he said in English with careful formality. Maya could see the disappointment in David's face and recognized that the video conference was about to end without any meaningful progress toward a partnership that could potentially be worth tens of millions of dollars to both companies. "Mr. Wang," Maya interjected in fluent Mandarin, surprising everyone in the room, "may I ask what vision you have for your company's growth in the American technology market over the next 5 to 10 years? The effect was immediate and dramatic. Mr. Wang's formal posture relaxed noticeably. His eyes showed genuine interest and surprise for the first time in the meeting, and his entire demeanor shifted from polite distance to engaged curiosity. "You speak excellent Chinese," Mr. Wang replied in Mandarin, his voice carrying warmth and surprise. "Are you Chinese American or have you studied our language and culture extensively?" "Neither, sir," Maya responded respectfully in Mandarin. "I'm Mexican American, but I have tremendous respect for Chinese culture, philosophy, and business traditions. I'm genuinely curious about your long-term strategic goals because I believe that the most successful international partnerships are built on mutual understanding and shared objectives rather than simple transactional relationships." What followed was a 45-minute conversation in Mandarin that completely transformed the dynamics of the business discussion. Maya found herself serving simultaneously as translator, cultural interpreter, and strategic facilitator, helping both sides understand not just what was being said literally, but the cultural context and deeper meanings behind their communications. Mr. Wang shared his company's concerns about working with American partners who seemed primarily interested in short-term profits rather than long-term relationship building. He expressed frustration with previous international partnerships that had failed because American companies didn't understand Chinese business culture or the importance of maintaining face and mutual respect in all business dealings. Maya translated these concerns for the Techno-Global team while also helping Mr. Wang understand that American directness in business communication was not intended as disrespect, but reflected different cultural approaches to efficiency and decision-making. By the end of the extended video conference, Mr. Wang had agreed to host a Techno-Global delegation in Beijing for in-person discussions about potential partnership opportunities, something that months of previous negotiations and expensive consultant reports had failed to achieve. "How did you accomplish that?" David asked after the call ended, his voice filled with amazement and perhaps a touch of professional jealousy. "I listened to what he wasn't saying as much as what he was saying," Maya replied thoughtfully. Mr. Wang wasn't interested in detailed technology specifications or financial projections because he was evaluating whether Techno-Global understood and respected Chinese business culture. By engaging with him in his language and demonstrating genuine interest in his perspective and concerns, we showed respect for his cultural values and opened the door for real relationship building. Sterling, who had observed the entire exchange with growing fascination and excitement, made a decision that would change the trajectory of Maya's career even more dramatically than she could have imagined. "Maya," Sterling said with conviction, "I'm withdrawing my previous offer." Maya felt her heart sink, wondering if she had somehow overstepped boundaries or made a mistake that had cost her the opportunity she had worked so hard to achieve. "Instead," Sterling continued with a smile, "I'm offering you a completely different position. Forget about the International Communications Director role. I want to create a new position for you, Vice President of Global Cultural Relations. You'll lead our entire international expansion effort with full authority to develop and implement culturally appropriate strategies for each market we want to enter. The starting salary is $240,000 per year, plus substantial performance bonuses tied to international revenue growth, stock options that could be worth millions if the company continues to grow, and unlimited resources to build your own team of cultural specialists and international business development professionals." The room fell completely silent as Maya processed the magnitude of what Sterling was offering. The salary alone was beyond anything she had ever dreamed possible, But the position represented something even more valuable, the opportunity to build something entirely new and to use her unique skills to create an international business development model that could transform how American companies approached global expansion. "Mr. Sterling," Maya said carefully, wanting to make sure she fully understood the scope and expectations of what he was proposing. "I'm deeply honored by your confidence in me, but I want to ensure that I can deliver on the expectations that come with this level of responsibility. This would be a significant undertaking that could affect the company's international growth prospects for years to come." "Ms. Rodriguez," Sterling replied with complete seriousness, "this morning I watched you accomplish in 45 minutes what our team has been trying to achieve for 18 months, using consultants who cost us tens of thousands of dollars and produced minimal results. You didn't just translate language, you bridged cultures and opened doors that we didn't even know existed. I think you'll do just fine with expanded responsibilities." That evening, Maya called her parents with news that seemed almost too incredible to be real. The phone conversation was an emotional mixture of English, Spanish, tears of joy, and stunned silence as Carmen and Roberto processed the fact that their daughter had just been offered a vice president position at a major international corporation with a salary that exceeded their combined lifetime earnings. "Cuánto dijiste?" Roberto asked when Maya mentioned the salary, certain that he had misunderstood or that there had been some kind of translation error. $240,000 per year, Papa, plus bonuses and stock options that could be worth much more if the company continues to be successful. The silence on the other end of the line was profound and lasted so long that Maya began to worry that the connection had been lost. Finally, Carmen's voice came through, thick with emotion and barely controlled tears. "Mija, your grandmother Rosa would be so proud of you right now. She always told us that education was the only thing that no one could ever take away from you, and that if you worked hard enough and believed in yourself, anything was possible in America." Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into her new role with the same determined energy and meticulous attention to detail that had characterized her language learning journey. Her first major initiative was developing comprehensive cultural intelligence training programs for TechnoGlobal's international business development teams. But rather than creating generic cultural awareness seminars, Maya designed immersive experiences that helped team members understand the deeper cultural values and communication styles that drove business practices in different regions of the world. For the Asian markets, she organized intensive workshops with local business leaders from San Francisco's Chinatown, bringing in successful Chinese-American entrepreneurs who could explain concepts like guanxi, relationship networks, mianzi, face or reputation, and the importance of long-term thinking in Chinese business culture. These weren't academic lectures, but practical hands-on sessions where TechnoGlobal employees could practice appropriate greetings, understand gift-giving protocols, and learn to recognize subtle communication cues that could make the difference between successful and failed negotiations. For European expansion efforts, Maya brought in cultural consultants and business professionals who could explain the significant differences between German directness and French diplomacy, between Scandinavian consensus-building approaches and Italian relationship-focused negotiation styles, and between British understatement and Dutch bluntness. Each European country, Maya helped the team understand, required a different approach despite their geographic proximity and shared membership in the European Union. Maya's revolutionary approach was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to impose American business practices on international partners and expecting them to adapt to TechnoGlobal's corporate culture, the company would learn to adapt its approach to honor and work within each culture's preferred business styles, communication patterns, and relationship-building traditions. The results of Maya's cultural intelligence initiatives were immediate, dramatic, and exceeded even Sterling's optimistic expectations. Within 3 months of implementing her new strategies, TechnoGlobal had signed partnership agreements in Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou, worth over $50 million in combined initial value, with projections for much larger long-term revenue streams as these relationships developed and expanded. European expansion accelerated dramatically as well, with new partnerships established in Germany, France, the Netherlands, and Scandinavia. The success came not just from Maya's linguistic abilities, but from her systematic approach to understanding and respecting cultural differences, while finding common ground for mutually beneficial business relationships. But Maya's most significant achievement, and the one that truly established her reputation as a transformational leader in international business, came when Sterling challenged her to explore opportunities in the Middle East, a market that had previously seemed completely impenetrable to American technology companies due to complex cultural, religious, and geopolitical considerations. Maya spent 6 weeks preparing for this challenge, approaching it with the same methodical thoroughness that had characterized her language learning. She didn't just review her Arabic language skills, but immersed herself completely in Middle Eastern business culture, Islamic business ethics, regional political sensitivities, and the historical context that shaped how Middle Eastern business leaders viewed partnerships with American companies. She consulted extensively with imams from local mosques, seeking to understand Islamic principles of business ethics and the religious considerations that influence decision-making in many Middle Eastern companies. She spent hours in conversation with business leaders from the Bay Area's Arab-American community, learning about the subtle differences between business practices in different Middle Eastern countries and the importance of understanding regional conflicts and alliances that affected commercial relationships. Maya also reached out to international students from the region who were studying at nearby universities, practicing her Arabic dialects and gaining insights into contemporary Middle Eastern perspectives on American business practices, international relations, and cross-cultural collaboration. When TechnoGlobal's delegation arrived in Dubai for the region's most important annual technology and business conference, Maya was prepared not just to translate languages, but to serve as a comprehensive cultural bridge between American business practices and Middle Eastern values, expectations, and relationship-building traditions. The Dubai International Technology Summit brought together influential technology executives, government officials, and business leaders from across the Middle East, many of whom had developed skeptical attitudes toward American business practices after years of cultural misunderstandings, failed partnerships, and international incidents that had damaged trust between American companies and Middle Eastern partners. Maya's defining moment came during a panel discussion on international collaboration and cross-cultural business development. Speaking in fluent, formal Arabic that demonstrated deep respect for her audience and their cultural traditions, she addressed the assembled business leaders directly, rather than allowing Sterling or other techno-global executives to speak through translators. "I understand and respect the reluctance that many of you feel toward partnering with American companies," she said, her Arabic carrying the kind of formal eloquence that Arabic-speaking audiences particularly appreciated. Too often in the past, international business relationships have been built on the assumption that one culture must dominate another, or that success requires abandoning traditional values in favor of Western business practices. She continued, weaving together concepts from Islamic business ethics, traditional Arab values of hospitality and mutual respect, and modern American innovation in a way that resonated deeply with an audience that had rarely heard American business representatives speak with such cultural understanding and genuine respect. "But I believe that technology should serve humanity regardless of culture, geography, or religious tradition," Maya continued in Arabic. "When we approach international business as a means of building bridges between peoples, rather than simply maximizing short-term profits, we create value that extends far beyond financial returns and contributes to mutual understanding and prosperity for all involved parties." Maya's presentation continued for 25 minutes, during which she discussed specific ways that American technology could be adapted to serve Middle Eastern market needs while respecting Islamic principles, regional cultural values, and local business traditions. She addressed concerns about data privacy, cultural sensitivity in software design, and the importance of local hiring and technology transfer in any successful long-term partnership. The response from the audience was unprecedented in the conference's 15-year history. Business leaders who had been politely skeptical of American companies for years began approaching techno-global representatives with genuine interest in exploring partnership opportunities. By the end of the 3-day conference, TechnoGlobal had been invited to participate in major infrastructure projects in the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, with potential contracts worth over $200 million in initial value and the possibility of much larger long-term relationships. Sterling, who had watched Maya's presentation with growing amazement and the dawning realization that his company had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary, found himself once again completely reassessing his understanding of what was possible in international business development. "Maya," he said as their plane flew back towards San Francisco over the Pacific Ocean, "you've completely transformed how I think about international business and cultural intelligence. For years, we've been trying to export American business culture to other countries instead of learning from and adapting to the wisdom and traditions that other cultures have developed over centuries or millennia. It's fundamentally about building bridges rather than walls," Maya replied, gazing out the airplane window at the vast ocean below. "Every language I've learned has taught me something profound about how different cultures understand the world, approach problems, and build relationships. Those different perspectives aren't obstacles to overcome. They're incredible assets that can be leveraged to create value and understanding that benefits everyone involved." By the end of Maya's first year at Techno Global, the company's international revenues had increased by an astounding 340%, making the international division the fastest-growing and most profitable segment of the entire corporation. Maya had been promoted to Senior Vice President of Global Cultural Intelligence with a salary that had grown to $380,000 per year, plus substantial performance bonuses tied to international expansion targets that she had consistently exceeded by wide margins. More importantly for the company's long-term prospects, Maya had completely revolutionized Techno Global's approach to global business development. The company now maintained cultural intelligence offices in 12 countries, staffed by local cultural specialists and relationship managers who could provide ongoing cultural guidance, relationship maintenance, and strategic advice for long-term partnership development. Maya's success had not gone unnoticed in the broader Silicon Valley business community or the international business world. Harvard Business School invited her to deliver the keynote address at their annual International Business Symposium, where she spoke to an audience of faculty, students, and business leaders about the critical importance of cultural intelligence in global commerce. The World Economic Forum asked her to participate in high-level panels on cross-cultural communication, international development, and the role of cultural understanding in addressing global challenges. Technology industry publications featured her story as a compelling example of how diversity, cultural competence, and unconventional career paths could drive extraordinary business success and innovation. Major consulting firms began offering substantial compensation packages to try to recruit Maya, recognizing that her unique combination of linguistic abilities, cultural intelligence, and proven business results represented a new model for international business development that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars to the right organization. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition of Maya's achievements came from an unexpected and deeply personal source. Alexander Sterling approached Maya one afternoon with a request that caught her completely off guard and demonstrated how profoundly their professional relationship had evolved. "Maya," Sterling said, "my daughter Emma is starting high school next year, and she's expressed serious interest in learning languages and pursuing international studies. Would you be willing to consider tutoring her, or perhaps serving as a mentor as she begins to explore these interests?" Maya was genuinely touched by the request, understanding that it represented much more than a simple tutoring arrangement. Over the past year, her relationship with Sterling had evolved from a traditional employer-employee dynamic to something approaching mentorship, mutual respect, and even friendship. A transformation that neither of them could have predicted when Sterling had first dismissed her qualifications based on his assumptions about her background. "I'd be genuinely honored to help Emma," Maya replied with sincere warmth. "What languages is she most interested in learning?" "She wants to start with Spanish and Mandarin Chinese," Sterling said with obvious pride in his daughter's ambitions. "She tells me that she wants to be able to communicate with people from different cultures without needing translators, and that she believes understanding other languages and cultures will be essential for any career she chooses to pursue." "She's absolutely right about that," Maya observed with a smile. Language learning isn't just about communication skills. It's about developing the ability to understand different ways of thinking about the world. different approaches to problem solving, and different cultural values that shape how people interact and build relationships. As Maya reflected on her extraordinary journey from community college graduate to Silicon Valley executive, she marveled at how her linguistic gifts and cultural curiosity had opened doors and created opportunities that she never could have imagined when she first discovered those dusty language learning materials at a garage sale 11 years earlier. But more than that, she had learned that true success came not from proving others wrong about their prejudices and assumptions, but from using her unique talents and perspectives to build bridges between different worlds and to create value that benefited everyone involved. The young woman who had once been casually dismissed based on her background, her appearance, and her unconventional educational path had become one of the most sought-after international business strategists in the global technology industry. But Maya never forgot the fundamental lessons of her childhood and her family's immigrant experience. The crucial importance of maintaining humility despite success, the irreplaceable value of hard work and persistence, and the transformative power of treating every person with dignity, respect, and genuine curiosity about their experiences and perspectives. On weekends, Maya still returned regularly to East San Jose to visit her parents and to maintain her connection to the community that had shaped her values and her worldview. Carmen continued to work as a house cleaner, though now by choice rather than economic necessity. Maya had offered to support her parents financially and enable them to retire comfortably, but Carmen had insisted that her work gave her a sense of purpose, dignity, and connection to the families and communities she served. "Mija," Carmen said during one of these weekend visits, "do you ever think about how different your life might have been if that man Sterling hadn't been willing to give you a real chance to prove yourself?" Maya considered her mother's question carefully, understanding the deeper implications of what Carmen was asking about opportunity, privilege, and the role of individual choices in shaping systemic outcomes. "Mama, I think Mr. Sterling needed me just as much as I needed him," Maya replied thoughtfully. "His company was failing in international markets because they were only able to see the world from one limited perspective. My linguistic abilities and cultural knowledge gave them access to different ways of understanding and approaching global business relationships." Still, Roberto interjected from his chair where he was reading the Sunday newspaper, "he could have easily allowed his initial prejudices and assumptions to prevent him from recognizing your talents and potential. Many people in his position would have done exactly that." "That's absolutely true, Papa," Maya acknowledged. "But I think people can change and grow when they're presented with clear evidence that contradicts their assumptions, especially when they have strong incentives to reassess their thinking. Mr. Sterling was intelligent and pragmatic enough to recognize that his company's success was more important than his personal comfort with being wrong about someone." Maya's remarkable success had also inspired positive changes and new opportunities throughout her old neighborhood and the broader East San Jose community. She had established a substantial scholarship fund for community college students pursuing language studies and international programs, and she regularly returned to speak at local high schools, community centers, and immigrant service organizations about the importance of education, persistence, and maintaining confidence in one's abilities, despite external skepticism or discouragement. Don't ever let anyone convince you that your background, your family's economic situation, or your unconventional path to knowledge somehow limits your potential or disqualifies you from pursuing ambitious goals, she would tell students with the passion of someone who had lived this truth. "I learned 9 languages in my bedroom in East San Jose using garage sale materials and community resources. The only real limits are the ones you accept for yourself." Maya's presentations to local students always emphasized that success required not just individual effort, but also the support of communities, mentors, and allies who were willing to look beyond surface appearances to recognize and nurture talent wherever it emerged. 2 years after joining Techno Global, Maya faced her biggest professional challenge yet, when the company was invited to serve as the lead technology partner for a massive international infrastructure development project that would involve coordination with partners from 15 different countries across 5 continents. The project would require seamless coordination across multiple languages, cultures, legal systems, and regulatory environments, while managing political sensitivities and cultural considerations that could make or break relationships worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Sterling asked Maya to serve as Techno-Global's project director for this unprecedented international initiative, making her the youngest person in the company's history to head such a significant and complex global undertaking. "Are you absolutely certain you want me to lead this project?" Maya asked when Sterling first presented the opportunity. "We're talking about $1 billion infrastructure initiative with global implications, diplomatic considerations, and the potential to affect Techno-Global's international reputation for decades to come." "Maya," Sterling replied with complete confidence, "2 years ago I made the serious mistake of underestimating your capabilities based on superficial factors that had nothing to do with your actual qualifications. I'm definitely not going to make that mistake again. You've consistently proven that cultural intelligence, linguistic ability, and genuine respect for diverse perspectives are just as valuable as any other form of business expertise, and often more valuable than traditional credentials or conventional experience." The massive infrastructure project required Maya to travel extensively over the course of 8 months, working directly with partners, government officials, and business leaders in Germany, Japan, Brazil, South Africa, India, Australia, Canada, Mexico, and 8 other countries. Each location presented unique cultural challenges, regulatory requirements, communication preferences, and relationship-building expectations that had to be navigated carefully to maintain the delicate international coalition that made the project possible. In Germany, Maya had to master the cultural preference for extremely detailed technical specifications, precise timelines, and the kind of thorough documentation that German business culture valued above almost everything else. German partners wanted to understand every aspect of the project in meticulous detail before committing to any agreements, and they expected all communications to be formal, precise, and completely accurate. In Japan, Maya spent weeks building the personal relationships and mutual trust that Japanese business culture considered absolutely essential for any successful long-term partnership. Japanese decision-making processes required extensive consensus-building, face-saving protocols, and careful attention to hierarchical relationships that American business people often failed to understand or respect. In Brazil, Maya discovered the crucial importance of informal relationship building, personal connections, and flexible approaches to project management that allowed for adaptation and creativity in implementation while maintaining overall project objectives and deadlines. In India, she learned to navigate complex linguistic diversity. The project involved partners who spoke Hindi, Tamil, Bengali, and English, religious considerations, regional political sensitivities, and business practices that blended traditional Indian relationship-building approaches with modern international commerce. Throughout this complex 8-month process, Maya found herself drawing on every language she had learned, every cultural insight she had gained through years of study and relationship building, and every lesson about human nature and international cooperation that her diverse experiences had taught her. The project was completed 6 months ahead of the original schedule and 15% under the projected budget, an unprecedented achievement for an international infrastructure initiative of such scope, complexity, and cultural diversity. More importantly, the success of the project established lasting relationships and partnership frameworks that would generate additional business opportunities for all participating companies for years to come. At the project completion ceremony, which was attended by government officials, business leaders, and diplomatic representatives from all 15 participating countries, Maya was asked to address the International Assembly about the factors that had contributed to the project's extraordinary success. Speaking in multiple languages to ensure that everyone in the audience felt personally included and respected, Maya reflected on what the project had taught her about the possibilities for international cooperation when cultural differences were treated as assets rather than obstacles. This project succeeded because we recognized from the very beginning that our diversity was not an obstacle to overcome, but rather our greatest resource for innovation and problem-solving, she said, switching seamlessly between English, Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, and other languages as she addressed different segments of the audience in their native tongues. Every culture and every country brought unique strengths to our collaboration: German precision and attention to detail, Japanese consensus building and long-term thinking, Brazilian creativity and adaptability, South African resilience and resourcefulness, Indian technological innovation and problem-solving creativity. When we honored and systematically leveraged these different cultural approaches, rather than trying to impose a single methodology, we achieved something greater and more valuable than any of us could have accomplished working alone. The audience, representing dozens of nationalities, languages, and cultural traditions, gave Maya a sustained standing ovation that lasted for several minutes and demonstrated the profound impact her words and leadership had had on people from vastly different backgrounds. Sterling, watching from the audience alongside other techno-global executives and feeling a deep sense of gratitude and professional pride, experienced a profound moment of personal reflection about how much his own thinking and leadership approach had been transformed by his relationship with Maya and the lessons she had taught him about the value of diverse perspectives, cultural humility, and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize extraordinary talent and potential. After the ceremony concluded, and Maya was surrounded by congratulations, business cards, and invitations from international partners eager to explore future collaboration opportunities, Sterling approached her with a proposal that would once again dramatically change the trajectory of her already remarkable career. "Maya," he said, "I have another offer for you, and this one is even more significant than anything we've discussed before. Techno Global's board of directors has approved the creation of an entirely new subsidiary company focused exclusively on international cultural intelligence consulting and global business development services. We want you to lead this new venture as Chief Executive Officer, with complete autonomy to build your own leadership team, develop service offerings, and establish the strategic direction for what we believe could become a revolutionary new approach to international business consulting." Maya was intrigued but cautious, understanding that such an opportunity would represent both incredible possibilities and enormous responsibilities. What would that structure look like in practical terms? You would essentially be running your own independent company within the Techno Global corporate family, Sterling explained. We would provide the initial financial resources, technological infrastructure, and administrative support, but you would have complete freedom to develop consulting services for other companies that are struggling with international expansion, cultural intelligence, and global business development challenges. The offer was compelling not just financially. The CEO position would come with substantial equity ownership that could make Maya extraordinarily wealthy if the consulting venture succeeded, but because it would allow her to scale her impact far beyond a single company and potentially help dozens or hundreds of organizations develop more effective and culturally respectful approaches to international business. "There's one condition that would be absolutely essential for me," Maya said, after considering Sterling's proposal carefully. "I want to establish formal partnerships with community colleges, universities, and educational organizations to create clear pathways for students from underrepresented backgrounds to enter international business careers. The consulting company should not just serve corporate clients, but also function as a vehicle for developing talent and creating opportunities for people who might not otherwise have access to international business careers." Sterling smiled, recognizing that Maya's response perfectly reflected the values and perspectives that had made her so successful in her current role. "I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Maya. Consider it not just approved, but a fundamental part of our business model and mission." Maya's new consulting company, Global Cultural Intelligence Solutions, officially launched 8 months later with Maya as Chief Executive Officer and a diverse team of cultural specialists, linguistic experts, and international business professionals representing over 30 countries and more than 40 languages. The company quickly became one of the most successful and sought-after consulting firms in Silicon Valley and beyond, as companies across numerous industries sought Maya's expertise and methodologies for international expansion, cross-cultural team development, and global business strategy. But Maya's greatest personal satisfaction continued to come from the educational and mentorship programs she had established alongside the consulting business. Every quarter, she personally met with scholarship recipients from community colleges throughout California and other states, sharing her story, providing career guidance, and helping them develop their own paths to success in international business, diplomacy, translation, cultural consulting, and related fields. Your background, your family's journey, your community's experiences, these are not limitations or disadvantages to be overcome, she would tell these students with the conviction of someone who had lived this truth. They are unique perspectives and valuable insights that the global business world desperately needs. Don't try to hide or minimize where you come from. Leverage it as a competitive advantage and a source of understanding that others can't easily replicate. 5 years after that transformative first interview with Alexander Sterling, Maya stood before the United Nations General Assembly in New York, addressing world leaders, diplomats, and international business representatives about the critical role of cultural intelligence in international diplomacy, global commerce, and peaceful cooperation between nations. In a world that often seems increasingly divided by language barriers, cultural misunderstandings, and ideological conflicts, she said to the assembled representatives of 193 nations, we need bridge builders and cultural ambassadors more than ever before. Every person who makes the effort to learn another language, who seeks to understand another culture with genuine curiosity and respect, who approaches differences with empathy rather than fear, these are the individuals who will ultimately shape our shared future and determine whether humanity can successfully address the global challenges that require international cooperation and mutual understanding. As sustained applause filled the General Assembly Hall and delegates from around the world rose to acknowledge her presentation, Maya thought about the incredible journey that had brought her from a garage sale in East San Jose to this moment on the world's most prominent international stage. From second-hand cassette tapes to addressing the United Nations, from skeptical corporate executives to the respect of world leaders, her path had been shaped by an unwavering belief that understanding between peoples was not just possible, but absolutely essential for creating a better world. After her UN address, Maya received job offers from Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, international NGOs, and consulting firms around the world, many offering compensation packages that would have made her one of the highest-paid executives in their respective organizations. But she chose to remain focused on building global cultural intelligence solutions into a model for how international business consulting could serve not just corporate profits, but also human understanding, educational opportunity, and positive social impact. Sterling, now in his mid-40s and serving as chairman of Techno Global's board of directors, while Maya's former role had been assumed by a team of executives trained in her methodologies, had become not just Maya's business partner, but a genuine friend, advocate, and ally in her efforts to transform how American companies approached international business and cultural diversity. You know, Sterling said during one of their regular strategic planning meetings, I've been reflecting a lot lately on that first interview we had 5 years ago. I was so completely wrong about everything that mattered, and I'm honestly embarrassed by the assumptions I made and the dismissive attitude I displayed. You weren't wrong about everything, Maya replied with the diplomatic grace that had become one of her professional trademarks. You were appropriately skeptical given the claims I was making, and that kind of critical thinking is important in business. But more importantly, you were intellectually honest enough to change your mind when presented with evidence that contradicted your initial assumptions. That willingness to reassess and adapt is what made our partnership possible and ultimately successful. Still, Sterling continued with obvious regret, I can't help but wonder how many other talented individuals I dismissed or overlooked over the years because I allowed superficial factors to cloud my judgment about their potential contributions. Maya nodded thoughtfully, understanding that Sterling's self-reflection represented a broader awareness that had implications far beyond their personal and professional relationship. Probably quite a few, she acknowledged honestly. But the important thing is that you've learned from that experience, and now Techno Global actively seeks out diverse perspectives, unconventional backgrounds, and non-traditional career paths. The company has become a model for how organizations can benefit from embracing rather than fearing cultural diversity and intellectual diversity. Sterling's company had indeed been transformed under Maya's influence and the cultural intelligence methodologies she had developed. Techno Global now prioritized cultural diversity in all hiring decisions, maintained operational offices and cultural liaison centers in over 25 countries, and had become widely recognized throughout the global technology industry for its innovative and respectful approaches to international business development, cross-cultural team management, and sustainable global growth strategies. Maya's personal life had flourished alongside her professional achievements. She had purchased a beautiful home in Palo Alto, strategically located between Techno Global's headquarters and Stanford University, where she frequently guest lectured on international business, cultural intelligence, and the role of language in global commerce. But she had also maintained close emotional and cultural ties to her community in East San Jose, returning every weekend to have dinner with her parents and to stay connected to the immigrant community that had shaped her values and worldview. These Sunday dinners had become somewhat legendary among Maya's professional circle, as she regularly brought colleagues, international partners, clients, and business associates who were curious about her background and eager to experience the authentic cultural environment that had produced such an extraordinary business leader. Sterling himself had attended dozens of these family dinners over the years, gradually developing genuine friendships with Carmen and Roberto while practicing his slowly improving Spanish and learning to prepare Carmen's traditional Salvadoran recipes. These meals had become important relationship-building opportunities, but more than that, they represented Sterling's ongoing education about the immigrant experience, the value of cultural traditions, and the importance of maintaining connections to one's roots despite professional success. "Your parents raised an absolutely extraordinary daughter," Sterling had told Carmen during one particularly memorable dinner that included several international clients who were visiting Silicon Valley. "She raised herself," Carmen had replied with the mixture of pride and humility that characterized her approach to discussing Maya's achievements. "Roberto and I just provided love, support, and the belief that anything was possible in America if you were willing to work hard enough and never give up on your dreams." As Maya approached her 30th birthday, she took time to reflect on the dramatic transformations that had shaped not just her own life, but the lives of countless other people who had been touched by her work, her example, and her commitment to creating opportunities for others. The shy community college student, who had once questioned whether she belonged in the competitive world of corporate America, had become one of the most influential and respected voices in international business and cultural intelligence. But perhaps the most meaningful measure of Maya's success was not her personal achievements or financial rewards, but rather the expanding pipeline of students, professionals, and cultural ambassadors she had helped create through her scholarship programs, mentorship initiatives, and educational partnerships. Through her systematic efforts to create pathways and opportunities, dozens of young people from underrepresented backgrounds were now pursuing successful careers in international business, diplomacy, translation, cultural consulting, and global development, armed with linguistic skills, cultural competence, and the confidence that their diverse backgrounds were assets rather than obstacles. Maya's story had become an inspiration and a practical roadmap for a new generation of polyglots, cross-cultural communicators, and international business professionals who understood that success in the global economy required not just technical skills, but also cultural empathy, linguistic ability, and the wisdom that comes from experiencing multiple perspectives on human nature and social organization. Language learning applications now featured Maya's success story as proof that linguistic gifts and cultural understanding could open doors to extraordinary opportunities. International business schools incorporated her methodologies and case studies into their core curricula, teaching future business leaders that cultural intelligence was not a luxury or specialty skill, but a fundamental requirement for success in an increasingly interconnected global economy. Young people around the world, from immigrants in American cities to students in developing countries, cited Maya as evidence that linguistic talent, cultural curiosity, and persistent effort could overcome almost any barrier and create possibilities that previous generations could never have imagined. I hope Maya's incredible journey from being underestimated and dismissed to becoming a global leader and transformational business figure has inspired you as much as it has inspired me to think differently about talent, potential, and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize extraordinary capabilities. Her story reminds us that genius can emerge from the most unexpected places, that cultural diversity is a source of strength rather than division, and that our differences are not weaknesses to hide or overcome, but rather unique perspectives and valuable assets that make us stronger collectively than we could ever be individually. If this story of perseverance, cultural pride, and ultimate triumph has resonated with you and your own experiences or aspirations, please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of individuals who have overcome adversity and transformed challenges into opportunities, and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest content about human potential, cultural understanding, and the power of education to change lives. What lessons from Maya's remarkable story will you apply to your own life and career? Have you ever been underestimated or dismissed because of your background, appearance, or unconventional path to knowledge? Share your thoughts, experiences, and reflections in the comments below. I genuinely love hearing from you and learning about your own journeys, challenges, and successes. Until next time, remember that the world desperately needs your unique perspective, your cultural insights, and your individual talents, so never let anyone convince you to be less than you truly are or to hide the extraordinary gifts that make you who you are.